on here?
I'm
We're
sober.
live. I see. Well, this is number 3 since noon, so I'm on my way. But I got to tell you, I'm not a very big vodka guy, but I got to tell you, I got to hand it to what's his name, Dan Aykroyd, for this stuff.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, Crystal Skull vodka. It's like 4 times as expensive as all the other vodkas out there, but it's definitely worth it if you can throw in the cash for it.
Oh yeah, I've always been a big fan of Stoli.
Yeah, Stoli's very good, but I'm a Scotch man, so it's usually.
Well, we already talked about it on Twitter one time, man. Glenlivet, it's like the best liquor on the planet.
Well, it's one of them. Most of the ones that start with Glen are the ones that I like Glen Mornigy and Glen Fiddich.
So you have a thing for Glen?
I do, especially when it comes to Scotch. Except for
Scotch Glens.
Oban is really good. I very much like that one.
Well, everybody knows I have a thing for Glen, so it's fine.
So what's that like, anyways, Duke? Yeah, it must be so awesome, I guess, to have best of both worlds options.
It is it's very freeing.
Yeah, you never have to worry about not having someone around that you can yuga with, you know, for lack of a better word.
Is that the technical term?
I don't know. I just made it up on the fly.
Hey, man.
I blame this.
Hey, Shane.
I yuga most vigorously.
Vigorously. I like the way you said that.
Vigorously yuga.
yeah, exactly.
That's got to go on a T-shirt.
I yuga vigorously. I was trying to think of. You remember the pretty much, I think, only the one actual movie that Ringo Starr was in called Caveman?
Nope.
Oh,
yeah.
Zug Zug. That's what they called it. You guys have never seen Caveman? Oh my goodness! If you like movies in the vein of a movie like Airplane or something that Mel Brooks would do,
I love Mel Brooks.
Then definitely watch Caveman because it is so funny. And Ringo's hilarious, anyways. So he just made it was a great movie. Recommended to anyone watching this, all one of you.
all one of me. That's Shane.
You and your
Shane and me.
Is that
me
it?
and my
Oh, okay.
me.
I think Shane is a bot, man. That cat's everywhere. Like every time there's a live stream, I show up and Shane's like, "Hi, Duke," and I'm like, "Dude."
Shane's Twitter's AI. He's like everywhere, and he must be because he always opens with "Hello, humans." Kind of suspicious, if you ask me.
That is pretty suspicious.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Highly sophisticated computer algorithm designed to take down the atheist community.
Yeah.
yeah, right. So what do you got? You, Duke and Nadine.
Yes, honey.
Our community on Twitter is fucking fantastic, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And you can always, there's always someone around that will give you support whenever needed, right?
Absolutely.
See, this, Joel, is what I'm talking about. Like these guys most of these guys that are in here right now with us, most of them, both of them, all 2 of them, generally jump into my after parties all the time. But this is the kind of support that you can expect, especially if you decide that one day you want to discuss atheism on YouTube. But you have a channel, don't you?
Probably.
Probably.
Yeah, but you're just not active on it right now, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really make videos.
I think you should, man. I think you've got a really brilliant mind and the way you think of things, and I think you might have some very good things to say that people would actually listen to. So.
There's the pheasant.
I'd probably say I've only had a brilliant mind for about 2 years then, because that's when I started studying.
Oh, no. Come on. Just because your brilliance was misguided before doesn't mean it wasn't there.
Yeah.
I mean, it shows. Yeah. Anyway, anything that you've ever wanted to do activism-wise would be fully supported by my friends here, definitely on Twitter.
Absolutely. And if you ever need a laugh track, I'm here.
Yeah, Nadine giggles at pretty much anything.
I do not.
That's what I love about Nadine.
Yeah.
I just start talking. I could talk about anything if she start laughing. I love it.
Yeah.
She's so happy.
Never. I resemble that remark.
Is your room flooded with nitrous oxide and you just need help?
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah.
I love Brit humor. It's just killer.
Hey man, yeah, it's one of the best British humor.
Hey, we got Britain to thank for Tim Minchin.
Yeah. My aunts still watch Coronation Street.
He is actually from my hometown.
That's been going long since long before I was born.
Hold it. You said Tim Minchin. Isn't he Australian or New Zealand?
He lives in Australia. Well, he lived in Australia. I can't remember if he's moved back or not, but he was actually born in my hometown.
Oh, you're kidding me. That's cool. He's hysterical.
We should get a plaque or something.
Yeah. Birthplace of Tim Minchin.
I mean,
We do that here in the States. We put up little billboards like when a country singer or something is born in some small town, they'll have a billboard outside of the town that says so-and-so was born in this town.
Well, we do have a more famous person from my town, which is Francis Collins.
Oh, wow.
I'm like super terrible with names, so I'm
one of the guys who discovered DNA.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. That is really cool. Absolutely.
Oh yes, that's what started to change everything.
Yeah, that was a huge
that we understood. Yeah, and what we can do now with it is mind-boggling. Actually, some of it scares me, to be honest.
Well, there was a project which mapped the phylogenies of 3,000 species, I think, which laid out a map which almost exactly paralleled the comparative morphology as well. So
nice.
And one of the projects I really want to help with is the Phylogeny Explorer project
on Facebook.
Cool.
Yes, mapping.
Yeah, I'm a member.
Yes, mapping life will be just amazing, and it's a challenge that creationists just can't handle.
I know. They don't know what to say to it.
Yeah.
Well, they'll try and use more of their nonsensical beliefs to try and stymie it, but they just can't.
Yeah.
They'll just say things that are demonstrably not true, and then they'll just double and triple down.
Yeah.
But my book. but. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I'm just like, do you ever stop to think that maybe your book isn't as factual as you think?
The main problem with creationism is step one is to produce a god which could have done the creating. And if they fail at that step, everything else is fruitless anyway.
Well, and the concept of an all-loving God.
Well, that's not necessarily...
that's just...
Yeah, you don't have to have that for a creationism. You can definitely have an evil god and still have creationism.
Oh yeah.
I would think what's more likely a very, very non, like just a non, like a not evil, not good, like this very even God that doesn't care, like a very dispassionate God. Because it would seem like if the universe is modeled after God, then that would be what he's like.
Yeah.
Oh, indifferent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
That would be a deist approach. But people tend not to like deism because of the implications.
Yeah. Well,
deism
firm
is
believers.
Identical to atheism anyway.
Oh, yeah.
To some degree, yeah.
So the only difference between deism and atheism, really, that if someone is genuinely a deist, because I tend to find that they are actually theists but pretending to be deists in some cases, because they think that the God intervenes in some way. But the only difference is the deists will claim to know the origin of the universe, and someone who's, say, an atheist wouldn't necessarily claim to know that. So it's just an argument from ignorance again.
I know we don't know how it exactly started. There. Mm-hmm. I made my positive
claim. We have a good idea. We have some good ideas.
We have some good ideas, but we do not know.
Yeah, Krauss's A Universe from Nothing is probably the closest I've seen to a reasonable explanation.
Yeah, agreed.
Krauss is brilliant.
It's unfortunate what happened. I mean, it's unfortunate that it is affecting his career, but hey, we're all human and we make stupid decisions and dumb things sometimes, and especially when Whoa, trust me. When we're people, we're fallible, right? So
What?
sometimes
No.
our sexual nature can take over and we make dumb decisions, right?
No.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yes, we
Never.
do all the. Oh, shut up.
It's like, but my Bible, humans are fallible, but my
Yeah.
Bible's not.
Yeah.
I had quite the argument with somebody on what Hams? Is it Ham? I don't know. Whatever numbnuts' Twitter is. And I'm like, yeah, those exact same fallible humans that wrote the Bible. Are those the humans that you're talking about? Someone got right offended by that because
Well, they'll tell you that
that's the
sure
word of
humans wrote
God.
it, but it was divinely inspired through the people.
Yeah.
The Holy Spirit infected them like a virus, and they made the Bible. And then you get great verses like was the one in Ezekiel that she lusted after her paramours, whose members are like the members of horses and whose emissions are like the emissions of donkeys. You can't make this shit up, dude. Somebody was Randy and wasn't getting no nookie and when they wrote that shit.
I think that was a metaphor for Israel. I think it was.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually.
Yeah.
So I never tend to bring up the metaphorical ones because there are so many literal ones that they can get completely wrong. The ending of Mark, for example, is a serious sticking point.
Well, okay, you're going to have to remind me because I'm not really.
Mark 16:8 is where the original gospel ends. Everything after that point is a forgery.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Reading Ehrman was the real eye opener.
Oh, Bart Ehrman?
Yes.
It's funny because he's been trying to prove that Jesus actually existed. And even he admits himself that he's having issues finding anything really credible outside of the Bible itself.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
If you read Raphael Latasta's book, There Was No Jesus, There Is No God. I think it was it that one, or was it the Jesus Did Not Exist, A Debate Among Atheists. That's one where he compares Bart Ehrman's approach, and I think a bit of Maurice Casey as well, with Richard Carrier's approach. And he sort of comes down in the middle and goes, well, I don't think we know either way whether there was or wasn't. But he does quite a good deconstruction of Ehrman, because Ehrman made quite a lot of mistakes in that book. I don't think he researched it as carefully as the others because he thinks it's a foregone conclusion. And then, of course, Carrier took him to pieces for it because he wasn't careful enough in his book. But when I read Did Jesus Exist, I was listening to the audiobook. I had to keep stopping it and shouting about how bad it was and how many mistakes he made. That was clearly wrong.
Now I come in and I completely forgot about all the chat.
Oh, why? What's going on?
Well, no, it was because you can't remember the chat, so someone has to do it.
Oh, I see. Oh, wow, there's people here, actually.
The funny thing about Jesus, it wouldn't matter if he did exist. His existence, the fact that he was an apocalyptic preacher in the first century doesn't mean that he was God. It's irrelevant. Really.
No. If he did exist, it was more likely he was just some rabbinical figurehead. And there may have been more than one, and they just pieced all the different ones together to make this single entity, so to speak.
Yeah, that's what I find much more plausible.
Sure, like, what is it? Like King Arthur.
Yeah, but King Arthur, I'm pretty sure, never actually existed.
No, but he was an amalgamation, I believe. I might be wrong about that.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. It's good. They took the best qualities of different various kings of the time period and came up with a character, possibly.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned in the chat, Francis Collins is a Christian. Yes, he is. Unfortunately.
Yes. Unfortunately, yeah. Maybe we can break him.
If you read his conversion story, he was apparently convinced by a waterfall, which makes you think he was probably primed towards Christianity before that point.
Maybe he's an Aquarius.
Now. No way.
Oh, come on. Like you put any validity into astrology anyways?
No,
Come
not
on.
really, but still. I'm an Aquarius.
Hey, I believed it at one time.
I did sort of, but not really. It was great coincidence, and it's lots of fun.
That's why if they post horoscopes, if they print horoscopes in newspapers, legally, they have to at the bottom put for entertainment purposes
only. Yeah.
Isn't it due to the rotation of the axial tilt that everything's out by one star sign anyway? So.
Oh, probably.
Over the years, it's drifted because of our tilt. Our tilt
something like 6,000 years or something like that was enough to shift it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, probably.
I used to have this great meme, and it would show Christians on one side and atheists on the other, and it was like all these symbols from theists from one side and being thrown, all these symbols from atheists on the other side. It says, as much as theists and atheists don't get along, there's one thing they can agree on: astrology is fucking bullshit.
Well, you say that, but then there are Christians who believe in astrology.
Which is really weird if you ask.
Of course, I can't twist my arm around the right way. There we go.
Oh, the water sign.
Yeah.
So, Shane.
Does that mean you're a waterbender?
Yeah.
Shane is pretty convinced that Jesus never existed. Full stop.
Yeah.
I'm also convinced that Jesus never existed.
Yeah.
Just going through the arguments.
I'm definitely
I'm more along
one.
like Duke said, he's an amalgamation of preachers and stuff of the time, rather than being actual.
We hear the name Jesus.
Ananias was one possible influence, although I think that's more for the story than the actual original Jesus, because that didn't happen until the Jewish War, and then Mark was written subsequently. So either from knowing about him or potentially from reading Josephus, some of those elements was thrown in. But the original Jesus before that was Cephas, Peter's Jesus. I don't like using Peter because people misassociate that with the disciple Peter, who of course wasn't invented until a generation or so afterwards. But the original Peter, who potentially might have written First Peter, it's very difficult to tell.
Yeah, they're not sure because all those gospels are anonymous, really. So they kind of just put names to them.
So it's either him or potentially a predecessor where he took over, who was creating peshas from scripture and putting together this concept, apparently out of frustration with the corruption of the temple cult. And I'm getting all of this from, of course, Richard Carrier's work and Robert Price's and David Fitzgerald's. And
Price is awesome too.
Yeah, all these guys who put this together. But you can definitely see that the point of Jesus was to remove the need for the annual trip to the Jewish temple to do the sacrifice. And it wasn't until the temple was destroyed that this suddenly got really popular, because then there was no temple left to make these sacrifices at.
Yeah.
And this was an alternative Judaism. And of course, it wasn't seen as Christianity yet. It was a sect of Judaism. Yes.
Which is why today they actually still have, and I've seen bumper stickers too, Jews for Jesus.
Yes.
Like that whole sect thing is still there. What do you call them?
Jews. That's what they called them when I was a kid, proselyte Jews. What's another thing? There's another thing I've always thought of, and I don't know if there's any validity to this, but we think of the name Jesus, and it seems pretty rare. But his name was Yeshua, which was, as I understand, a pretty common name. It's named after a major figure in Judaism. I remember watching one thing on historicity of Jesus, and I can't remember the guy's name. He's an older guy, kind of heavy set, gray hair with a gray beard. I've seen him
probably Robert Price.
I think that's him. But he was
Robert
talking.
Price, yeah.
Yeah, he was talking one about the Josephus text where it had been monkeyed with. It had been changed at some point in the past. Like at some point when they were translating it, there was some text added to it where it says he was the Christ and he did all these miracles and stuff. Where they think that was actually altered by somebody in a later date. And there was another point he brought up that there was a secondary Jesus and James that were actually priests either Sadducee priest or one of the priests, Sanhedrin or something like that. And where it shows that Josephus is talking about Jesus and James, it may very well be talking about them and not the actual Jesus and James of the Bible.
Yeah, that's in the Antiquities of the Jews. The first one is the Testimonium Flavianum, and that's universally acknowledged to be a forgery. The problem is the historians who support the existence of Jesus think that that was only a partial forgery. But it doesn't make any sense in context. It's nothing like anything Josephus would have written, and it breaks up a story. It's literally inserted this little advert for Jesus in the middle of a story.
Need more coffee.
Okay.
So you get this glowing recommendation for Jesus, and immediately after it says, and then another terrible thing happened. It's just, it's clearly a forgery. It didn't even get quoted by apologists who were trying to read Josephus to look for mentions of Jesus. So Origen completely missed it. It wasn't until Eusebius, who's probably the person, either Eusebius or his predecessor, forged it and then started quoting it everywhere. So most likely it's Eusebius, who had a bit of a reputation for dishonesty anyway.
Now I heard I heard that the parts in I think it was the Josephus one where there was parts about Jesus that were added after the fact, after the original.
That's the consensus among historians. The idea is that the Testimonium Flavianum, it has a core which is original to Josephus, which doesn't really fly because of various other evidence, but that's what the majority view is. The other thing was the mention of called Christ. I forget the exact story. It was it James who was killed? He was like stoned to death or something like that. He was killed unlawfully, and then in a response to that, they made Jesus the head priest, which I believe was an apology to their father. The problem is the words "called Christ," which may have been an interpolation accidentally when they were copying out, because if they put somebody wrote Christ in the margin because thinking, was this the Christ? Was this the brother of James, the brother of Jesus Christ? When they were copying these, because of course the parchment would disintegrate, they used to copy and copy and copy. And during one of those copies, it's possible that got written in. Because of course Josephus would have explained the word Christ. It was meaningless to anyone reading it, because Josephus was writing for a Roman audience that didn't know much about Judaism.
Right.
His whole point was to introduce Judaism and the concepts in it. So when he never uses the word anywhere else, and if he would have used it, he would have explained what it meant, because that was just like him. He would write paragraphs about these other messiahs, for example. He's written loads about them.
Yeah.
Never mentions Jesus legitimately. So it's very out of character. It makes more sense without that little word, or a couple of words, I think it is.
Didn't they get a sample of the ink used or something? And it was different from the original?
You may be thinking about the Tacitus manuscripts.
Maybe that's the one. I think you're right. Yes.
There is a mention of Christianos, which is Christians, the group which were led by Chrestus, who was an author or a rebel or something, who led a rebellion against Rome, a very small rebellion that was rather brutally crushed, I think.
Yes, I know. Yes,
there is evidence that a scribe tried to change it to Christianus.
Right, and that's where they found that a different ink was used, and so
you can actually see. I think it's in ultraviolet. You can see the original letter underneath it. The spacing is different, and there's an I in its place. And it's possible that maybe Josephus and Tacitus could have been genuine mentions, but either way, they were not eyewitnesses. They were born long after Jesus would have died, roughly with a 30s AD date anyway. So even if they were genuine mentions, there's still hearsay based on things the Christians were spreading. So it's not really good evidence either way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there is no good evidence.
Well, there's stuff that they claim is good evidence.
The best evidence for Jesus is probably the brother of the Lord mentioned in Paul.
Yeah, but even that is in question, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's terrible evidence, but it's still the best.
Well, I say we're just qualifying it as the best evidence.
It's very ambiguous. The phrasing suggests that he's saying the apostle Peter, and then he's saying, and just a regular brother of the Lord, James. So depending on how you read it, you can read it two different ways. You can either say literally a flesh and blood brother of the Lord, or you can say it's just a cult brother. It's as opposed to an uninitiated person, an outsider. You've then got the cult brotherhoods, and we know in mystery cults they had these hierarchies, and then you've got the internal people, the apostles, the ones who are having Jesus, visions of Jesus. That's the problem.
Yeah, right. Well, I look at it as the same way as I call like you or Duke my brother.
And Paul expresses brothership very clearly.
Yes,
repeatedly refers to everyone as brothers and sisters in Christ and so on. So it's very suspicious that he would not then need to specifically say brother in the flesh, or whatever the equivalent of biological brother would be.
He would have been more clear if he meant it that way, I think.
And he's also differentiating James from other Jameses. And also it's very suspicious that if this is supposed to be the flesh and blood brother of Jesus, he tends to see Paul tends to see Peter and James, potentially John. I don't remember if he specifically mentions John. He doesn't like them. He thinks that they're false prophets. He's fighting against them for control of the cult, because they're of course saying he's a heretical sect. His offshoots. he took all their diaspora Jews from the cult. I think they started, and then he sort of took over with his non-penis slicing brand of Christianity.
Right.
Of course, the original one, in the Petrine version of Christianity, it was all about keeping the old Jewish laws as well, which meant they had to be circumcised. And this was Gentile territory, so most of them were not circumcised. And adults tend to object more to having their penises cut off.
What?
Not their whole penis.
Actually, a friend of mine went and actually had a circumcision. He was 28 at the time.
Wow.
He went and had it voluntarily done.
Why?
I have no idea.
Was it religious reason?
Well, he is religious, but he's somehow got it stuck in his head that it's healthier too.
Oh, see, that's
it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other reason, So I don't know.
It's easier to keep clean without one, obviously, but still, there's no major health issues with having foreskin.
Yeah, the point is desensitization.
Exactly, really. I think he was just kind of rationalizing it to himself. Is what
I don't remember my circumcision because, of course, I was 13 days old or something when it happened.
Yeah.
But I do remember not being able to walk for a year.
My problem was I was tripping over it.
Yeah. Here we go. But I bet all the kids in the neighborhood love the fact that they can play jump rope with it.
That's right. I've been famous everywhere I go.
The old tripod joke.
Yeah.
It never gets old.
You can wear it as a tie at fancy occasions. All right. Enough of the penis jokes, you guys.
Jeez, I know. I'm sorry. I'm such a.
I'm okay as long as I don't pass out. Like, you will be fine. You might need to call a house and send somebody down if I fall off my chair and pass out. But otherwise I'm okay.
She hit her head on her crochet stuff and it was all over.
It's cross stitch right now. It's cross stitch.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. Well, you're still doing that, eh?
Yeah, it's getting there. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. And, I'm almost done what I can get done. I'm missing some colors, or I'm low on some colors, so I have to go to town. But I'm going to town next week, so yay.
Awesome. Well, it looks good so far, and it's a skill I don't have.
I might be able to get it done before Josiah and I end up getting married.
Aw.
Oh. Well,
I know. Are you guys going to do it live so I can watch? Or?
We will. You were going to come. We're going to do it here, so you can come. We're going to do it in Newfoundland.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
Well, how the hell am I supposed to get there?
How else does anybody else get to Newfoundland?
I do believe you can ride a moose. Or...
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I knew I liked this guy. Yes, we have to ride a moose.
Just from the stereotype.
Yeah.
I believe you have to have a Mounties uniform for that.
I'll just grab one of my dog sleds from the 2-car igloo garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And mush, we'll make it over there. Surviving on nothing but maple syrup and pancakes all the way. Oh, and poutine.
I want to see someone who's instead of using Puskies, use a Chihuahua.
Guys, I'm going to say goodnight. Natcha asked for my help, so I'm going to go help him during his stream that's starting a bit later. And but he just sent me a link, so love you guys. It's nice meeting you, Joel.
That was
Have
nice
a good one. Well. Hit me up on Twitter. I'll stick in my Twitter into the chat. That's me.
Okay.
Hit me up on Twitter and all that kind of fun stuff. And have a good one. It's nice meeting you.
You too.
Right,
nice.
See you, Dan. I'll see you, Duke. Love you guys.
Tell Natcha, say hello to Natcha for me and tell him to shut the hell up. I hate him.
Okay. See you, Shane.
Tell him we love New Zealanders.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's gonna love that one.
Yeah, he'll shoot me. Bye.
Thanks for jumping in. Nadine's a deer. She's like not the animal, you know what I mean. She's good people. And Duke, man, you are uncharacteristically silent today. So what's bothering you?
Nothing's bothering me, dude. I'm just sober. I'm telling you, that's the only difference.
Wrong time of day for it.
I mean, it's Saturday, man. It's time to let loose.
Yeah, it's after hours. I just wasn't getting into anything tonight.
Too much last night?
No. I hadn't in a few days. Just not really taking a full-on break, but not really like going full bore like I used to. Kind of backing off a little bit.
Well, I hear you. I don't do it as much as I used to either. But usually weekends I'll tie a few on with some friends or something. Because someone I know at any given point on the weekends is having some surf and turf barbecue. They just seem to come. So you go and then you get lobster or crab and steaks and whatever. And
Jesus.
Jesus.
I need to move to where you're at. No, you know the kind of Jesus I like. I'm not going to go there, Neil. I promise.
Okay.
I'll leave all my gay Jesus at the door.
Oh, I don't care about that. You know that. I can laugh at that kind of shit with you right along with you. So.
But yeah, no. If I seem uncharacteristically quiet, it's just because I'm not quite so loose as I was last time. When I get loose, I tend to get mouthy.
Yeah, but a lot of what you have to say is actually, even though you're slightly inebriated, it still is important shit that you talk about. So.
Yeah.
Right?
I was curious. I was thinking about this while we were talking earlier. One thing I've noticed is like it seems like when it comes to people that do the scripture, like the Christians and such, a lot of what they believe seems to be kind of like just memes inside of the meme. Like, like that meme of like you only use 10% of your brain.
Which is horseshit.
Yeah, it's been debunked a million times. But they just made a movie, Lucy, like in recent years, where that was the whole premise of the movie. Is that now she uses 100% of her brain so she can transcend.
You're thinking Limitless? Is that the one you're thinking of?
No, Lucy's Scarlett Johansson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, right. I haven't actually seen that.
I deliberately didn't watch it.
It was actually pretty good. Outside of that one like scientific flat out fallacy, like if you could just, at the end of the day, I'll watch something because I'm suspending disbelief from the beginning. You know what I mean? It's like I'm not going to get too deep in it like a zombie movie because there's no chance of there ever being zombies. So I'm not going to overthink it. I'm just going to enjoy the flick. But
I hate to break it to you, but there are forms of zombies.
Well,
the
but there's
fungal
insect
ant
world.
zombies and yeah.
Well, they got that insect, the ants that get paralyzed or taken over.
A wasp that stings a certain section of a caterpillar's brain that can tell it where to go and that kind of thing.
It does the spider too. I think there's one that gets the spider or a grasshopper or an ant or something, and they go up and they sit on the blade of grass. And they get eaten by the rabbit, and then the rabbit.
Most commonly ants.
Yeah, there's a parasite that does that. There's also the toxoplasmosis.
Yes.
That makes rats not scared of cats, and then they get eaten.
Yeah. But the reason I brought that up is that, like, I want to say that I found out. I don't know. I'm so far removed from biblical study these days. I don't really remember a lot of what I used to know back when I was still practicing Christian. But I want to say that the Book of Revelation, written by John, is not written by John the Apostle.
Yeah,
written by John the Revelator.
But Ehrman did Forged, and then if you're more inclined towards the academic side, the Forgery and Counter-Forgery is like the serious academic version of that. Forged was a fantastic book. I learned lots of stuff about that. But yeah, it's just written by some guy called John.
Wasn't it considered blasphemy at one point?
Yeah, it was heretical. It wasn't added until I think the 4th century. Athanasius.
Yeah, something like that. That's what I remember hearing about too.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was added right sort of last minute. The same goes for things like the Book of Esther. It almost wasn't included because it doesn't mention God. There's quite a lot of things, and also there is no canon at the moment. I mean, obviously you got the Catholic Bible as well, so there isn't a single solid canon of the Bible even today.
Which is part of the problem.
Right, and that's the thing I was bringing up with the meme is that I remember growing up, I was always taught, and I can still hear people say it, that the Book of Revelation was written by the Apostle John, and that, you know, he was on Patmos, he'd been boiled in oil and all this kind of stuff, and they didn't even know how he was able to write it. It's like, well, you guys don't even know the history of
in church as well.
Right, and so it's like this meme. It's like this meme inside of the meme that everybody just repeats it to themselves and to each other over and over again until it just sticks. And then you have some new splinter cell form of Christianity that often doesn't even make sense by the original text.
Well, actually, when they tell outright lies, it actually makes it easier to leave. One of the things I discovered that helped me to escape from Christianity was when I was told, and I know this is an exaggeration now, but at the time I believed it, that the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus is better than the evidence for the existence of Julius Caesar.
They told you this?
Yeah, I heard that too.
The thing is, what they've done is they've taken a different example, which was the evidence for the existence of Jesus versus the evidence for Caesar crossing the Rhine, I think. Sorry, not
yeah.
What's the name of the river? I can't remember. Wrong river, but it was about him crossing the river. That's name is going to bug me. And that was the actual original thing. Of course, what they've done is they've taken that further and go, instead of the existence of Jesus, they've gone for the resurrection and taken that far. And of course, discovering just how bad the evidence for Jesus was, which I discovered in the God Delusion. He doesn't cover it in detail, but it's briefly mentioned. When I went, of course, and fact-checked that, I realized that the church had been lying to me. It was another thing.
Rubicon.
Thank you. Yeah, that's why I got the letter R. But yeah, so that was it's something that Carrier actually covers because it's such a common claim by apologists. But discovering the lies definitely helped me leave, because it was one of the things that made me question, well, what else have they been lying to me about?
That's funny, because the lies had nothing to do with me leaving. Like, I didn't discover all of the crazy stuff until a little while after I was already on the road. For me, it was just a lack of presence. You know what I mean? For me, it was just like I'm praying every night, and I never get any like feeling that he's there
or discernible response.
Right. And it's not even like to the extent of, well, I want you to help me win the lottery, or, you know, I mean, something like that. I mean, I'm just talking about, like, I would like peace and assurance.
And children to stop being raped by priests.
that too, and dead silence, radio silence, and then I started moving that direction. Once I started moving that direction, I discovered all the other, like, the evidence against, and all the reason, like, where eventually I actually started critically thinking and saying, you can't put 11 million species of animals on a fucking boat, 14 by 14, it's 7 by, what I mean? You can't do that. That's impossible.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
But like I say, it's passed down from generation to generation, and you're told that all your life. It's like this thing that just sticks with you until all of a sudden you think about it and go, wait a minute, why do I even believe that?
Are you being chased by a goose right now? Because I keep hearing what sounds like goose honks.
There's some kind of bird out here. I'm having a smoke.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It was discovering Aaron Ra's YouTube channel was one of the things that really helped me as well. In fact, that's what took me from being an agnostic atheist to a Gnostic atheist, because his points are so solid. There isn't really any way around it. To the point where gods are not just physically impossible; they're also logically impossible.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're talking about the Foundational Falsehoods of Christianity series that he did?
Of creationism, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've got the book for that as well. It's really good.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I haven't got that yet. It's on my list.
Hang on, Joel. I was a patron of Aaron's for quite some time, and he sent me a T-shirt. Of course, this one,
Ah, yes, that's a great one.
Right, and it's autographed by him.
Oh, nice.
Right there. So yeah,
I had
he's a very good guy.
I was lucky enough to be in a chat with Aaron where I was there an hour early because I wasn't sure about the time difference.
Right.
So I got to just chat. It was just me and Aaron for an hour.
That's awesome.
Very smart guy.
I was in a Patreon hangout with him, and there was a couple other people in there, but I swear him and I were the ones that were talking mostly. So, and we were going, "Oh, my hair's longer than your hair," and all that stuff. Right? It was pretty funny.
That was good. If you get him on the subject of dinosaurs, then he can just talk forever.
Yeah.
You guys ever looked into Trevor Dunn? I think his name is Trevor Dunn, the paleontologist.
No.
He was recently on Non Sequitur.
Oh,
and they had three.
I'll have to look him up.
It's one of the ones I haven't seen. Then.
Yeah, I think it's maybe I've done Trevor something. He's like his Twitter handle is Tattoos and Bones, and he's like this badass tattooed dude with a like highlighter green beard. And he's just super freaking smart. I love him to death, man. My first time I saw him was on Joe Rogan, and he was debunking a bunch of just nonsense. And he went on the Non Sequitur show with a bunch of.
He didn't have a green beard when he was on Rogan, though, did he?
Maybe or maybe not. I don't know. He always I know on Rogan he was wearing a big ass hockey sweater that was Cthulhu, like a hockey jersey that was like Cthulhu.
Right. Yeah. I remember that Joe Rogan episode actually.
Yeah, he went on Non-Sec recently and went up against 3 dinosaur deniers and just wrecked their entire worldview. It was brutal. I loved every minute of it, man. You guys should give him a look. He's a super smart guy. I love him to death.
Blows me away that anyone could deny what is so blatantly right in front of them, too. It's just silly.
They usually say they're dragons or something like that.
Yeah, because dragons are real.
Well, Komodo dragons are real.
Well, listen, don't say that in front of the name. You're going to hurt your name feelings.
I've seen that Game of Thrones documentary.
I was just watching Archer, and they had Komodo dragons in the new Archer series.
Yes, I've watched that now.
That's a good show.
The linguistic jokes are fantastic in that, especially when they get David Cross on Noah.
Oh yeah. I mean, now are we? That's something I'm confused about. See, the end of season 7, Archer's in a coma.
Yeah.
So we get season 8, which is Dreamland, which doesn't really conclude. It goes 8 episodes, and you're kind of left hanging. And then all of a sudden, he's like fucking Indiana Jones or Rescue Rangers or something. And we don't know.
I don't think they particularly care about the continuity in that. They're just having fun.
Yeah, with the whole different.
You know what? Once
ideas.
you go into a dreamland, we can do anything.
Yeah, maybe this is like phase 2 of his dream.
I think they're just running with it and came up with a fun idea. Krieger as a parrot.
Which is just genius.
As a macaw, yeah.
Yeah,
Is that the show where the guy's the spy?
Kicker.
Yes, very well written. Very.
Oh, dude! If you've not watched Archer, binge watch the shit out of it because it is absolutely brilliant.
They're only about 20 minutes an episode. They're
20,
really
20,
high quality
21.
written. Very well done.
Yeah.
I think I watched the first season. Is that the one where they're like the chick's dating the guy and she's always talking about how they're going to go watch interracial porn?
Yes. Well,
Cheryl.
Wait a minute.
Carol,
Cheryl, whatever they want to call her, whatever week it is. Yeah. The tunt, she ends up being a billionaire.
Cheryl Tunt. She says some weird stuff.
She's into choke sex and stuff like that, where she's strangled and.
Oh yeah, her encounter with Fisto Roboto.
Yeah. And I love the what's his name there, the Bionic Man guy. He keeps popping up in every
Barry.
single.
Yeah,
Barry. Yeah, that's right. He even dresses in the red tracksuit like Steve
and other Barry.
And other Barry, his alter ego. But yeah, I mean, in season, what was it? The beginning of season 4, where the first episode, he's actually Bob from Bob's Burgers.
Yes.
Of
course, he is Bob from Bob's Burgers. Yeah.
Well, yeah, same voice actor, but and then they show the actual family and what they would look like in more realistic cartoonish.
Yeah, they actually did a parody of, I think, Viggo Mortensen's movie where he used to be in the mafia or something like that. He was part of some sort of mob.
A History of Violence.
He goes into just doing a job where he's working in a cafe, and then of course his whole old life comes back to haunt him. So I think that movie.
Got Ed Harris in it. It's called A History of Violence.
That's the one, yeah.
Yes.
Good movie.
Yeah, it was a good movie. A little bit off the subject, but we're talking about voice actors there for a second. Did you guys ever see that documentary, I Know That Voice?
Yes, very good documentary.
I have not.
I think you have to pay to see that one.
Do you? I watched it for free on Netflix back when I first saw it.
I didn't know it was on Netflix.
Well, you paid for Netflix, so it wasn't free, pal.
Yeah, that's really good. It's got loads of famous voice actors. John DiMaggio, of course.
Yes.
And it had some of the old guys as well.
Billy West was in there. It had a lot of the older people. It had the lady that did Boris. They did Natasha on Boris and Natasha, and the witch and the old Looney Tunes. She was on there.
Porky Pig as well.
That's Mel Blanc. That's Mel Blanc.
Well, they got the guy that does it now.
But yeah, they did the modern one.
Oh,
they tell this great story about Mel Blanc in the documentary where he was in a
he comes up a lot.
And he was put into a coma in a car accident, and they couldn't get him to wake up. They couldn't get him to respond. And the doctor was going up to him and said, Mel, and he wouldn't respond. And another doctor or something, or maybe the same doctor came up and he goes, "Hey, Bugs." And Mel went, "What's up, Doc?" And so he got him to respond. Yeah, he got him to respond by talking to him in his cartoon voices, and that's what brought him out of it.
Yeah, that was an interesting story. I have no idea if that's actually true, but it was
me either, but it sure sounds like it'd be awesome if it was true.
It was told by his son. The story was told by Mel Blanc's son. So I don't know. I mean, there's a possibility it's not true. But
authority here.
Oh, goodness. My stars. I can't do that.
Well, it came from his son.
It's probably been embellished.
Yeah.
There's
sure.
probably a grain of truth to that.
I mean, Mel Blanc, in my opinion, Mel Blanc is probably one of the greatest voice actors in history.
I would put him up there as
the other voice
the
actors
greatest.
Agree. Yeah.
I mean,
I would agree.
You guys, I should have been doing that for a living. I'll be honest with you right now, because I can fucking do millions of voices. And I think
in that show they actually say you have to not just be able to do the lines, you have to do anything as that character. Like you have to read Shakespeare as Daffy Duck.
Or sing as that character. They were talking about like one of the cartoons where Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny do like impersonations of each other, and they dress up at each other. And it's actually Mel Blanc doing Daffy Duck doing Bugs Bunny.
Well, it's easy for him. He does both voices.
When you watch the cartoon as a kid, you don't even think about that. But then when they bring that up, you're like, holy crap, that's got to be super freaking hard. He's just got to, he has to have it down pat, Well,
it's like when you get Rick and Morty arguing with each other, it's just the same guy talking to himself.
Yeah. Which is another great cartoon.
That is a great show.
Like Rick and Morty smuggles philosophy into your brain.
Yeah. I like that. I'm just, God's not real. I just got to rip that Band-Aid off you right now.
Get all your shit together and put it in a bag.
Yeah, and then it's sort of irreverent toilet humor, and then it just smashes you in the feelings, just out of nowhere.
Adventure Time.
Have you seen Final Space yet?
Yes,
No.
I've seen. I haven't finished it. I've got most of the way through it.
I didn't know what to make of it after the first couple episodes, but it kind of grew on you.
Yeah, you get to know the characters. Same with Disenchantment.
Yes, I love it. I love it. It's great.
I stopped watching Final Space to watch that first, and then go back.
We'll go back to Final
character
Space.
In that.
Yes, he is Lucy. Yeah, I love that show. It's so funny. Huh?
Did you guys watch The Good Place?
Never even heard of it.
No, not seen that one.
Okay, both seasons are now available on Netflix, and they're about to come out with a third one. It's Kristen Bell and Ted Danson. I have laughed that hard very rarely. Like, I almost fell off of my chair laughing at that show. Like, a girl, Kristen Bell's character, dies and goes to heaven. And then when she gets there, she realizes they've made a clerical error, and she actually belongs in hell. And the whole thing is her trying to figure out how to stay in heaven, and it's just, and they can't curse. So every time, because it's heaven, so she'll be like, "What the fork? Why can't I say fork?"
Like it auto corrects her.
That's an interesting idea.
That's kind of neat.
So it shows you how horrifying heaven is.
Yeah.
It certainly does. It absolutely does. But it's just it's one of the best. It's one of those shows where I watched it and was just like floored by it. And I don't normally really get that heavy into shows, but that one just threw me straight down the line, because it's like, it's one of those great things where it's talking about things that were like fitted to religion in such a satirical way that it's entirely irreverent of every religion that's ever been written.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that reminds me of The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which is basically about escaping a cult.
Yeah.
And the humor in where a character says something unspeakably horrific and then carries on as if nothing was said.
Pinot Noir.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching that. I was watching that thinking there must be religious people watching this show that don't realize it's about them.
Oh, I'm sure, because of the subtlety. But yeah, well, I don't want to say it, but a lot of times it's fairly easy to fool some.
Well, they're so entrenched in their belief that, that you're not going to, it's really hard to reach some people, man. They get behind their walls and they're happy. Their belief makes them happy, and so they can't imagine believing anything but what they believe and still being happy. So it's like this big conundrum where they just don't even approach it, and anything that questions it, they run away from it. And so
that reminds me, actually, that's something I forgot to ask you, Joel. When after you finally were free of the old beliefs, I don't know if you were like me, where suddenly death wasn't really a big issue anymore. Like I wasn't afraid of it anymore.
I think at first I was, because you get that sort of existential dread moment where you're going, as expressed in Julia Sweeney's show, Letting Go of God, where she said, "Wait a minute, the Earth is just spinning through space and no one's looking after it."
Yeah,
we just think it literally is.
It could just be wiped out by an asteroid, and you previously thought, well, God won't let that happen, which is where the whole climate change denial thing comes from. It's people saying, oh, well, we don't have to worry about the planet because God will sort it out.
Right.
It's a very irresponsible way to live. I think I very briefly went through that phase, because then I started to give it some thought. And I forget which philosopher said it. There was someone who said, the idea that something doesn't have meaning unless it's unending is ridiculous. So would you not have lunch because lunch will finish?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Right.
I wouldn't drink this beer because eventually it's going to be an empty can, right?
Yeah. So, not to mention the problems logistically. If, say, nobody ever died on Earth, you'd end up with the Earth being packed out with people to an interesting depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was lucky in that respect. Like the first atheist I came across when I first stopped believing or really started questioning, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know a single name of a single person that was an atheist. I had no idea. And the only person I knew one person, that was Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller. And he was the first person I came across. And his approach to death, it was just kind of like, well, what are you worried about? You're not going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, why are you worried about not existing? You're not going to exist.
Yeah,
and it's
he
like
has a great response to the moral argument as well.
Oh God, that's my favorite. Where they're like, "Well, if you don't believe in God, why don't you just rape and kill everybody you want to?" And he goes, "I have," and the number is 0.
Yeah.
Because I'm not.
That's classic.
Well, it always
interesting. I never had a problem with that though, because the first book that I read before becoming an atheist was The Selfish Gene. So I already knew all about the morality question. That's a very misleading title.
No, I did struggle with that. I did struggle with that because I spent a long time just thinking about ethics because I was trying to figure out like what did I believe that I could keep and what did I believe because I thought I was supposed to. So I spent a long time distancing myself from the text that I'd been trying to live my life by for so long, and to the point where it's like, well, why am I pro-choice? I mean, pro-life. Why am I pro-life? That doesn't make sense. Outside of the Bible, why do I take that stance?
Yeah,
there's
you have
nothing
to
wrong.
Reconstruct all of your thoughts, and that's why Goodness Without God was a great book to have. I forget how I found out about it, but that was brilliant in helping me reconstruct my entire ideology. Really, I wouldn't say I have an ideology. I try not to have a particular one.
Well, we all have. I think all our own ideologies are fairly subjective.
Yeah, but it's best not to be too closely attached to one. I like to think that if somebody proved me wrong about something, that I would change my mind.
Of course. Yeah. That's why I call my ideology malleable. It changes as society changes, as whatever.
Evidence.
I mean, it's always ready to be bettered by whatever the consensus might be on something better. You know what I mean? Like maybe I'm not phrasing it right.
Well, I think the standards change. I think in a few hundred years, meat eaters will be seen as like something that's immoral and doesn't happen anymore. I think, for example, nudity will be no longer taboo because I think clothing is going to be optional. If we don't obviously kill ourselves in the meantime. But say we reached a point where we were able to control our climate, where we actually gained control over that. And we were able to make the Earth hotter and colder at will. We would then be able to have the kind of scenario where we wouldn't necessarily need clothing anymore. And in particular, when you have individual responsibility.
Except for those pesky mosquitoes.
Yeah. Well, we have.
That's what mosquito nets are for.
Humanity has actually done a huge extermination job on mosquitoes already. I mean, they're naturally cold weather creatures. They live more naturally in, say, Europe than they would in Africa. But the reason they're not so prevalent in Europe is because of the massive extermination campaign.
Well, trust me, they're alive and well here, and I've got fucking scars all over my elbow from scratching the shit out of them to prove it.
Yeah, I grew up with mosquitoes in Chad.
Yeah.
Well, you're right about the cold weather thing. I lived about 4 years in Alaska, and that's mosquito country right there, man. That's the most mosquitoes I've ever seen. I lived in the swamp, and I've lived there, and there are more mosquitoes in Alaska than there is, I think, anything else.
You haven't been to Saskatchewan, have you?
Nah.
But they're the size of B-52 bombers there.
Yeah. They've got those in Alaska, too. The big, giant mosquitoes, man.
Yeah. You can hear them coming about a half an hour before they get to you.
They're like drones, mosquito drones. They're actually owned by the government.
There was a project. There was a project run by a hacker and funded by Bill Gates, I think it was, that was using lasers to shoot down mosquitoes.
Yeah.
What? Are you kidding?
Did you see that? Yeah, it was a TED Talk or something. Where they point the laser. They have like towers with lasers on, and they point the lasers out, and they try and they'll find a mosquito. They'll use the laser to monitor the wing beats and work out whether it's a female that's looking for blood. If it is, they just intensify the beam and fry it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's the males that distract you while the females doing the dirty work, right?
Yeah, males are vegetarian.
Yeah.
That's true. I remember reading about that because it was part of his malaria initiative to get rid of malaria.
Yeah, I don't think it wasn't cost effective yet, but they'd done some trials and they reckon keep on developing the technology and we'll get to the point where it actually will be, you'll be able to create a laser defense grid around any village and you just fry any mosquitoes that get near it.
Mosquito Star Wars project.
Yeah, it sounds like a sci-fi thing, but it's literally just a pole with a laser on that just regularly scans around, and all it has to do is recognize a mosquito and fry it, which doesn't take that much power.
Nope. No.
That's the coolest thing ever.
Tiny little fucking things.
Yeah. That's a very clever idea.
That's awesome. All right, you guys, I'm going to have to call this quits because I've got to take off and go and hang out with a friend of mine, so.
Yeah, I better get some sleep.
Yeah, it's late for you. So, all right. Thanks, Duke. Thanks for jumping in with us. And once again, Joel, thank you very much for helping me out with my channel today with your story. It's great. Yeah, it's been great. And we'll keep in touch, and you can jump in on any of our discussions if it's appropriate time for you.
Yeah, definitely. I'll keep an eye on your channel, and never know, I might tweet.
We'll get you active. We'll get you.
I was gonna say, Joel, man. If I'm Duke Bonanza, that's all you got to look for. Is just Duke Bonanza on Twitter. If you get in touch with me, I'll signal boost the shit out of you, man. We'll get you some followers.
Yeah. No, seriously, Joel, you have a brilliant mind, and I think your voice should be heard. So, and Twitter is far better at getting that out there than Facebook. Trust me, I used to be a Facebook only guy, but
yeah, Facebook has a lot of privacy settings intentionally, so
true enough, which is fine, and you can get the similar things on Twitter, but Twitter just, I mean, when you get involved with our community on Twitter, you'll see what I'm talking about. I much prefer it now than I do over Facebook, believe it or not, and I used to be a big Facebook guy. So
I don't use Facebook at all anymore.
Oh, I still do because I have to because of my blood donor thing, right? So I push it on both. Anyways, any form of media that I can use or social media that I can use to spread the word is always good.
Proselytizing for Satan.
That's right. Yeah. Hey, he throws the best parties.
That's a weird one.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no objection to Satanists, but I wouldn't personally join it because it gives Christians the wrong idea.
Yeah. And they really don't believe in Satan. Well, at least most of the ones I know.
That's the point. It's
the Luciferians you have to worry about.
Yeah, true.
Luciferians and theistic Satanists. The two groups that are the left-hand path equivalent of theistic Satanist religion. They're silly. They're just silly. I think it's all silly. Like I got away from religion to not be a part of religion. I didn't want to get away from religion, stop believing in God, and go join another fucking religion.
Another deity cult.
If you put up the tenets of the Satanic Temple and you put them next to the Ten Commandments, there's just no contest between those two.
No, I'll go with the Satanic Temple ones any day of the week.
Yeah.
Sweet.
All right. And we'll leave it on Satan after this one here, guys. Thanks again, you guys. And thanks everyone for watching. Any final words or
final words? Titties. What are you planning?
Titties.
I don't know. Titties. As good as any.
Hey, that's Duke's razor, man. Duke's razor. If the answer can be titties, the answer should be titties.
Duke's razor. I like it. All right. Until next time, guys, thanks again for watching both the shows, the interview with Joel and the after party. And we'll see you guys next time, which will be Wednesday with Atheist. So we'll talk to you guys then.